All right, we're recording.
We're literally all in the same room. If you're here, if you're watching, oh my God, that's so meta. Gemmed, shut up. Gemmed.
Kind of weird.
We are in the same place. Holy shit. Welcome everybody to episode 16 of Alfalfa. Hi, we're literally in the same space for the first time ever. It took us 16 episodes to pull this off, and here we are. Feels good.
Feels good, man.
Feels really good.
I mean, we see each other all the time in person, so this is weird that this is the first time we did this, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we've been doing it on Zoom though is pretty weird, but like we really wanted to do this. So we're doing it like MVP ghetto style, like literally sitting on an online streaming app right now, looking at each other in the metaverse, but actually also in real life. So it's perfect. And yeah, I'm stoked. I think this will be really good. So let's kick this off. We're going to go right into the Alfalfa fire round. We have 3 very interesting topics today, but first, hop in the Discord. Very important. Discord link is below. We're sharing a lot of Alfalfa there in between episodes. And Nick, you want to mention the collective shift piece?
Yeah, sure. Sign up with a collective shift. Coupon code Alfalfa to get 50% off. There was a recent share, or I guess a recent investment they made. Collective shift, kind of maintains their own portfolio. And in September, they purchased a DeFi token, Maple Finance. Recommended to members, and since then it's about up 132%, which is pretty good for kind of a bearish market. So anyway, they're friends of the pod. We love them, we use them. So yeah, use the code Alfalfa if you want to check them out as well.
Yes, awesome. All right, Alfalfa fire round. Who's going to kick off? And then actually, let's give a quick summary of what this episode is going to be about. So maybe Nick, if you can mention our.
Yeah. So we're going to cover Yuga Labs a little bit, the Bored Ape ROI and their pitch deck that came around. We're going to do a little COVID retrospective, just kind of looking back on it, and it's kind of perfect that we're all together for this, even though we didn't care about it in the first place, but kind of perfect for it. And then lastly, we're going to talk about behavioral biases, particularly like behavioral finance. So fun topic we talk about a lot in person, so we'll cover that as well.
So this is like, according to the 3 segments that we said last time, we're going to stay consistent with this whole thing of like doing the Alfalfa fire round, giving the Alfalfa up front, going right into investing, money, crypto, and then something related to politics, society, culture, and something related to life, health, whatever that might be. And based on what people are saying in the Discord, it seems like they really dig this structure. So let us know what you think, and let's do it. All right, so fire round. Steven, why don't you start?
Last week, I was doing a lot of Raid Party.
Nice.
Biggest NFT game right now, I think, that I can think of. Can you guys think of a bigger one?
No, I mean, you said it was printing ETH.
Absolutely printing ETH. Yeah, I think probably made about 30% of the total cost of all of the investment into the game, just in terms of confetti rewards so far. And all the NFTs are up about like 300% since
Hell yeah.
entry point.
You could do better.
It's it's been good. There's a lot of whales playing. Nobody's selling. It's kind of like a slow moving game. There's 2 heroes in the game. Well, there's 2 categories. Like there's fighters and heroes. Fighters were crushing them, but I think if you want to get into the game now, heroes is going to be really good. Other thing I've been doing this week, Stargate Finance launched. Stargate is a hot new sort of like bridge protocol built on top of layer 0, which is a really interesting project we can talk about sometime. But
So Raid Party Heroes, the floor is at 1.2 right here, and the fighters are at 1. And the heroes should be worth more than the fighters, right?
The fighters were 1.5, and the heroes were about 1.9. So they're starting to move. Yeah, there's a dynamic in the game where you have to burn fighters to kind of summon, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on. It could be a little overwhelming.
I thought it was kind of like a wolf sheep scenario. It's not.
It's sort of like that, but a little bit different.
Yeah. Which one are the wolves? The fighter, the hero.
Heroes would be more analogous to the
Right.
wolves, but they don't really steal anything. You kind of just all fight
Bad guys and make confetti. It's a great Ponzi scheme. It's great. It's very.
It's fun as long as you're up 300%.
Yeah, 300% is good.
But so Stargate, if you want any stable yields as well, it's like 30% yields on like Tether. It's on every chain. Phantom,
What?
Polygon. Oh yeah, this is big. This is like the biggest thing everybody's talking about right now as far as new protocols.
What's the website? Stargate.
I think it's Stargate Finance.
I don't know. I'm just pulling.
Is
that
this
out of my
purely
butt.
for stables? Like this is the primary function, like the primary alpha is like you would go there for stable.
Yeah, so you're farming the Stargate token right now, which is absolutely mooning. It was up like 400% in the last couple of days. Last time I checked, but I don't know if it's still there. But yeah,
Is single-sided or
Single-sided.
Wow.
Yeah,
Love that.
25%.
on
On
USDT?
USDT.
I mean, basically every single pool is 20%.
Amazing. That's on arbitrage. Okay, yeah, it's on
on
every
everything.
chain. It's on every chain.
Literally everything. Yeah, this is like the biggest farm.
This is
in DeFi.
solid Alfalfa. This is solid.
Highly recommend. Legit project too. Like really legit project.
Layer 0 is a big thing.
Very juicy.
Yeah,
Very
so
juicy, my friend.
that was my week, sirs.
But shit, I'm just getting used to like looking at you guys and not
I'm still
looking at
looking
my
at the
screen. Like I'm super weird.
I like that there's a computer in between, sort of protecting me from you guys.
It is comforting, isn't it? All right, go ahead, Eric.
What the?
Nick's video cut out for a bit, but I think it was there. It was, yeah, I think you're okay.
No, you're all good.
Who the hell knows?
Okay, yeah. So I don't have much for you this week. All I was noticing was a lot of near naked bodies around me in Tulum. So Tulum Alpha. Tulum Alpha is like go to Papaya Playa project. That's one of my favorite clubs in the world. I've been all over the world. That's a good club. I did notice that.
That is fair, Alfalfa.
That's fair. Alfalfa.
Yeah.
I did notice that our call from last week was pretty solid, spot on. That like the market would bounce after FOMC.
Yep.
Market
Quite the
responded.
bounce, yes.
Market responded exactly as we predicted. So I'm still near term a little bearish. So I might re-enter the shorts soon.
Okay.
But yeah, that's all I got.
I'll go. So Look Labs that Nick and I are involved in, we talked about last week as well. Sold like an ETH and a half worth of the assets so far and staking the rest.
This is the weed game?
Yes,
Yeah.
this is a game that's, I would say it has the potential to be like Raid Party, and it's sort of a cousin to Wolf Game, and it's actually happening. There are actually things happening unlike Wolf Game. But started selling those assets, staking the rest, and I guess you have to. I mean, I don't want to get into the details of one game, but I guess my little marijuana buds have to be staked for like 7 days to find out what strain they are, and then I don't even know. Like I was texting Nick, I was like, "This is too much. Like it's too confusing. There's too many layers. There's too much complexity. I just want to make ETH."
These game owners are just like fucking with us. Like, let's have them play with sheep and wolves and have them talk about it. Like, make fun of them.
I can't wait to like play these.
First of all, I just like heard us talking for the first time because I've like been in the conversation kind of, and like I think just being like in Tulum, I removed myself a little bit. Now hearing it, like this is so stupid. All of it, all of this stuff is so stupid, and like it's all going to come crashing down. I'm like I'm so ready for this big bear market. Like it's coming. Like I'm just hearing us now. It's coming.
Eric, you changed.
I know. I'm
Changed.
It's going to get ugly for everybody. We're talking about buds games and
Did
wolves.
you talk to Right Click Save people? Yeah, you did.
Oh my god, he became a right click.
I became one.
I mean, to that point though, like, I mean, so I've listed pretty much over the last 2 days, I listed every NFT that I don't have long-term conviction in, which is everything except like 3 collections, maybe
Okay.
4.
Has anything sold? Or you just keep
Yeah, they're selling. Like I'm selling them for floor, or close to floor. I want to get out. I'm just kind of like, I think with a lot of what we'll be talking about today, which is related to Yuga Labs, which is related to ApeCoin, I think there's going to be a huge sort of flood of capital going toward ApeCoin and going toward the metaverse. Yeah, it's a liquidity suck toward the metaverse that they're building. And a lot of people are going to have FOMO and sell their try to sell their NFTs and whatever assets they have, and it's going to be a bit of a shit show.
It's so nice that you have NFTs that are worth something. I was going through my OpenSea account. I was like, well, I should probably sell some stuff, and it's just it's a lot of stuff that's like zero. I was like hurting looking at it. I saw, oh my god, I saw this like lonely astronauts thing that I bought. I looked at the chart. It was like the peak, like 7.5 ETH. The floor is like 0.1.
I actually
I'm just thinking about how that's going to be like $1 million someday, and I'm going to have that sitting in my account staring at me. Like,
Probably.
I mean, do we joke about this a little bit? Like the story about a Bitcoin pizza, the guy spent like thousands of Bitcoin on a pizza.
Yeah.
We're gonna have this talk about
Oh,
how we
for
spent
sure.
tens of ETH on a stupid JPEG. And
Absolutely.
We'll probably regret most of them, but hopefully the winners will outpace.
yeah, I'm trying to make it all back on Raid Party in one.
That sounds really promising.
What is that emotional bias called?
Nice.
I'm
all
pretty
right.
much done. I am preparing for a Wolf game exit because I have a lot of assets in that game, and it's taking way too long. But I will unstake as soon as this current little game that we're in ends, and probably sell.
Oh, they're gonna
all.
dangle another carrot in front of you right
No.
before. Oh yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna
I'm
get you.
done. I'm done. Anyway, over to you.
All right, cool. So I did a little bit of the same thing you guys did. I've been selling the NFTs. Like I said, over the next few months, I sold my MetaHero, which I luckily minted a top 50 rarity out of 10,000.
Let's go.
So I originally listed it for 20 ETH. I got an offer for
Casual 20 E.
I
Just to
got
clean
an
20.
offer for 11.
That's his ass.
I got an offer for 11. I countered with 16, and they accepted it. So
Well
There's
done.
only one little rebuttal.
no, I've been
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been trying to.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So sold that
It's
bad
huge.
boy. I still have a ton of Pixel Vault assets, so I still like the project. But yeah, depending on how they kind of move up and move down, probably gonna liquidate some.
How do you feel about the Punks comics? Because that's one of like the four that I'm like
I am down big.
way down, right?
Feels bad, man.
Like go look at the Punks Comic 1 chart, and whatever the highest point of that chart is when I got off a plane, immediately like opened up my laptop in the airport, and FOMO bought 2 of them.
Putting on your wealthy beanie.
Sounds like me and Curio cards.
Yeah, exactly. He ran from the golf course.
So I did content today with Founder Magazine,
Uh-huh.
right? And I literally told the story because the question was, what was your first NFT? And like, how did it go down? And I retold the story of us at the golf course, me hearing about Curio cards, Steven running to his car casually, and like, he's like, I've seen this before. I'm not falling for this again. And just ran home and scooped up the whole floor. Yeah, it'll work out. Curio cards will work out.
So just quick other trades. Put some ETH in Lido, and then pulled out the staked ETH, put it in Aave, and have been borrowing against it, kind of testing some hypotheses on how to potentially create an ETH retirement plan. So we've been kind of working on a financial model where you pull out, like roughly 4% of your ETH value every year via loan, and it's a way to kind of pull out some cash from your ETH value tax-free. So currently, through Lido's yielding 3.9%. My interest on the stables I pulled out is 2.9, but there's 1.4% of Aave rewards. So my net borrow cost is like, we'll call it 1.5%, and the yield is 3.9%. So I think it's a good way during the years where you want to pull cash out and use it to spend. You could. Or Steve and I, just before we started recording, we're talking about, just kind of compounding, pulling out ETH, putting in staked ETH, putting that as more collateral, and then kind of doing this recursive loan situation to kind of juice your yields. So anyway, playing with that, and I'll definitely
I'm
update more.
very excited and intrigued about Lido. So I just
I'm
started
nervous
diving
about
into
it.
this whole idea of like liquidity staking and
Yeah,
everything involved with that.
I'm excited, but I'm also more nervous about it than
So
excited.
what protocol are you using to stake ETH as collateral to borrow against?
Aave. Yeah. And I confirmed it rebases inside of Aave, so like your stake ETH just naturally goes up while it's
So
used as
you're
collateral.
like paying down your loan, sort of.
You could
just
like
let the-
sell off the ETH and like pay down the loan,
Right.
but I don't think you will necessarily have to.
Oh, just your LTV will naturally decrease.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Loan to
if you
value.
have, if you're fortunate enough to have $1 million of ETH, right? And we're getting 5% a year, then basically your ETH like in rewards goes to up 50,000 a year. But you can just pull that out as a loan,
Right,
right?
right.
And then because you're pulling it out as a loan, there's no tax on it, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like earning like almost like 100K in California, basically, because it's just 50K free and clear. So as long as you're only pulling out like your ETH rewards, like your stack isn't getting any smaller, you're getting a nice little
Is
tax-free dividend, basically.
is that only on Aave and L1, or is that also on like
It's all on
L2?
L1
Okay.
right now, though I'm sure it'll be
sure it'll
on Arbitrum Optimism at some point.
When do we want to like share this
I want
model?
to keep testing it because
What's
like
the plan here? I just want to tell listeners like
The model
what this
needs-
is, what to expect, and I don't think we've done like a proper explanation of this. So maybe
yeah, I mean,
that as well.
basically what we're doing is modeling out the growth of ETH, like using a logarithmic regression. So basically, like the returns go down over year. You have a diminishing returns.
like we're not going to see 180% forever.
Right. So we're kind of working out that formula and then have some assumptions, like how much can you pull out every year and how much are your borrow costs, how much is your yield? And then based on those assumptions, mapping out for 30 years and seeing, do you ever get liquidated on those loans? Do you get close? What happens if you get close? And there's some
Yes.
assumptions in the model right now, like at any point, ETH could go down 75%. And are you
Right.
still safe? So those we're just playing with. And I think it's important to kind of like prototype the model.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm trying to do. And then we'll definitely, circle around some people for some feedback. But I think it could play out. We'll see.
I mean, this is like huge. I think when we have this ready, the reason I'm excited about it is just to share it with people, share it with like Alfalfa, like listeners and watchers, because like ultimately we intend to turn this into this like retirement plan that we put out into crypto Twitter to give people this value from our show, from our collective like minds. So like I'm very excited about it, even if it's imperfect, which I expect it to be.
The ETH tax-free retirement.
Yeah, we need a good name for it. So if you're
ETH
listening and you're
401k.
very good at branding,
Yeah, I don't know. We gotta.
You know?
Yeah, we might need some suggestions in the.
I don't like that better.
Yeah.
Which one?
E401k. E401k sounds pretty good.
yeah,
Well,
it
how
sounds
do you?
good.
Because it's like memeable,
Yeah.
Let's move on to the first topic. So
Let's do it.
we're gonna go over a little Bored Ape Yuga Labs content. So I'm gonna try to share my screen and see if this works out. Nope, it's not gonna work out. Great.
It's not letting you share.
Let's see if it works
Sorry,
out.
I'll fix that post.
Ooh, ouch! It's not gonna work. Okay, cool.
I'll just lean over
Let's
here.
move on. So the first thing I wanted to touch on was the ROI of Bored Ape. So do you guys? I don't know. You guys probably saw a text I saw earlier, but do you guys remember the cost of a Bored Ape in US
$0.6
dollars?
$200, right?
Exactly.
0.6 ETH.
I think about it all the time.
So
0.07, 0.08 mid.
0.08.
Yeah, sorry, 0.0. Oh, I thought it was 0.06.
It was
Okay.
about $224. Let's call it $200 to mint. And then you got your Bored Ape, and then over time you got your Bored Ape Kennel Club, your Mutant Ape, and then you got the ApeCoin drop.
So fucking insane.
So the headline up front is that it's about a 2,500x, 2,500x on your return. You're basically
4%.
yeah. So your $200, your $200 is over $500,000 now.
It's $500,000.
Right. So let's break it down real quick.
Less
yeah,
than a year, right?
less than a year.
What?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So I mean, for all the losses we joke about, there's always this hope, I guess, or the possibility that these returns come out. So I mean, risk adjusted, maybe we're still making good bets. We talked about in the biases section. But the Bored Ape, it's 103 is the floor, so call it 300K,
Yeah.
right? So, and then the Bored Ape Kennel Club, it's an 8 ETH floor, so call that
24.
25K, right?
Mhm.
24K. Mutant Apes, I think they're about 65K.
23.
Yeah. So call it
22.
like 65K USD.
Mhm.
And then I think each Bored Ape got 13,000 ape tokens at $13 a piece. So, that's a chunky over 100K, 150K-ish, 160K-ish bag. So you're at like 500 and something K.
And some people bought multiple.
And
I mean, many people.
looking
we know
back to our
bought
group,
multiple.
the stuff we've purchased that have turned to zero, some people would need 40 of things. Good. And, so
Could have been,
could have been multi, probably like a decamillionaire, I think is the phrase, from this thing. But I think it's just good to point out the good examples, and survivorship bias might come up in the behavior finance section that only hear about the great ones, but pretty crazy.
I remember like lamenting about punks like when these came out, and I had bought one too, but I was like, oh my god, I'm so dumb. I knew about this forever, and I just bought a punk now. And then punks did like another 20x at that point, like while I was whining about them. And then while I was doing that, I like passed up apes. Like I had a bunch of people show them to me. So it just kind of goes to show you that like there's always opportunity.
In our office, I think just a week before Bored Apes came out, we had minted, I think cumulatively like 60 of these bastard GAN punks.
Yeah.
Some derivative of like punks. And if we would have just waited a week longer to do our degeneracy, it would have been pretty epic. But
I mean, your timing on your punk was solid. Like,
yeah, it was good. And I remember looking at Bored Apes, it's like, oh,
I remember passing.
yeah, I was like, oh, they just copied the ape part of the punks. That's silly. And now I'm looking back and like, they copied the ape part of the punks, and that was smart. So, I mean, I think they definitely had some biases there.
I think if I minted apes instead of the bastard punks with like the same amount of ETH, I'd have like $9 million worth of instead of like
$9 more million.
$800. And it's just such a near miss.
So obviously massive return. But then there's like what's going on with Yuga Labs, right? So
Let's talk about their deck.
Yeah.
So a deck
And their
got
raise
circulated online, and they subsequently raised $450 million at a $4 billion valuation. I'm pretty sure the deck that got circulated was not the final
Not
deck.
the real
Yeah,
final
I mean,
one,
like looking at it, there were some little weird things, but I mean, to point out, it doesn't matter what your deck looks like when you have real traction. Like you have traction like that, you make $100 million plus in revenue. Like you could create your deck in crayon and you'd raise that kind of money, especially in this market. So
I would like to see that actually,
yeah,
like a deck
like a
in
crayon.
crayon raising $100
It
million.
just says, "Fuck you, pay me."
Yeah,
Seriously, that would actually work.
It would actually be awesome.
So I pulled out 5 slides I think that are cool.
Okay.
The first one is something that I mentioned in the last podcast.
And I think everyone will be able to pull up these slides, so maybe call them out by number.
Yeah,
too.
so,
Just like what slides we're looking
yeah,
at.
I think this is slide 28. The text on the slide just says, the Bored Ape Yacht Club collections alone account for approximately 10% of the volume in OpenSea. Wow. And one of the things I mentioned last podcast was I think a con of this acquisition of CryptoPunks, or the loser of this, is potentially OpenSea, because if Bored Apes or Yuga Labs tries to create a private marketplace for just their collections with no fee or no OpenSea fee, maybe still a royalty fee,
but no.
they could pull 10%, which is more than Looks Labs did. So, Looks Rare.
Yeah.
So anyway,
10% right shave right at the top. Yeah,
Right.
amazing.
I don't know if everyone would do it.
Not
but,
everyone,
like,
but it would sort of have an
you gotta
incentive to
get
go.
comfortable with a new platform and still using it. But I feel like they should certainly do that.
I think the people who are paying like 300 grand for an ape are probably okay with going to a different market. They're probably at least, if not power users, they're at least relatively wealthy, one would think.
Yeah, I mean, and they acquired. I think they own the marketplace that punks are sold on. So at the very least, they can use that code to create like a.
You're referring to like Larva Labs marketplace for crypto.
Yeah, so if you go to Larva Labs website, you can check out the punks marketplace. It's pretty simple, but it's functional and it works.
Yeah, my first reaction to this was like, it's annoying. But to Steven's point, it's a good counter argument. It's a huge investment.
What's annoying?
Just like the separation of these platforms, like if they do go that route.
Oh.
Like, it's just like not utilizing Looks Rare or OpenSea, and
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
We'll get an aggregator. at
What's
some point.
Well, Gem is an
Gem and
aggregator that's getting
Genie.
some traction, which,
Right.
Yes.
real quick,
Do they have
We
a
should
token?
mention what that
I don't
is.
know.
Do they have a token?
Gem is an aggregator, so when you list on Gem, it'll automatically list on OpenSea and LooksRare.
Because I saw that Looks token has like come back to life over the last 7 days. It kind of doubled.
Yes.
So I'm stoked that I'm yielding whatever 4
You're still in there.
or 5% on my
I'm in there.
ETH in Lido.
I bought a little bit back, but not as much.
But I mean, you're getting 100%.
Might not be the bottom.
Yeah.
You're getting
it is.
100% return just in ETH. You're getting additional like 75% in Looks tokens.
I haven't been there in a while. Let me check the rewards tab real quick. Yeah, 108% ETH.
180%?
108.
So let's discuss these aggregators and marketplaces, though. Like Stephen, you kind of made a casual comment there. I think it's worth like.
Yeah, like I think in the future, like we're already seeing this. We talk about like the Argent wallet a lot, just because I think it's a good example of building out like a normal app that people use on their phone, and it's easy to use. You click some buttons and stuff happens, and it's running on crypto rails. But to you as a user, you don't see any of that. But it seems inevitable that will happen in NFTs, right? There'll just be some app where you're like, I want to buy an ape, and then you just like click the buy button on the ape you want, and that app may source liquidity from like 5 different NFT marketplaces where apes are traded, right? And that all gets like obfuscated away from the user. Like I don't think 10 years from now everybody's connecting like a hardware wallet and going to OpenSea and giving away their seed phrase in the Discord and doing all this stuff. Like I just think we'd move away from that, especially in NFT land. Maybe.
So ultimately, this looks like a mobile app, basically. The front end is just like a simple mobile first aggregator like Gem. Shut up. Gem.xyz, right, is the site. Or Genie. Most people seem to like Gem more.
Yeah, Gem is, in my opinion, like way
What's the site?
better done
Gem.xyz, I think.
than Genie. I've used both of them.
I've only used Genie. I got to use Gem.
Genie's cost me a lot of money on
What sort of fees?
locations.
What sort of fees does
Just buying
Gem
stuff at prices that were like somebody changed like the listing to like 3x.
Does Gem charge its own fee layer on top of sort of using OpenSea or Looks or whatever they
I don't know if they're doing that.
push liquidity to?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the use case so far is more for sweeping up something off like the floor.
It lets you bulk do stuff, which is really hard in NFT land. Like if you want to bulk sell like 15 NFTs, that's like, it's absolute hell to do that on OpenSea.
It's even more hell to buy, though.
Yeah, it's
If you want to
it's
buy
hell in
on
both
OpenSea,
directions.
you're literally going in to each one. OpenSea isn't updating.
Well,
in
I
real
stopped
time.
trading NFTs for a while because I wanted to, like, if the floor is like 0.3 ETH, I don't want to buy
It's
like
not
2
worth
of them.
your
I want
gas.
to
Okay.
buy like 30 of them.
What's the
That
next?
would take like literally an
What's
hour.
the next slide you got? What's the next slide you got? We can talk about Gem for a minute.
So next slide, I'll read the text. And we'll build an SDK that allows collections, creators, and developers to build for any community who wants it, creating an infinite ecosystem entirely available in our in-game marketplace. We're seeing it as an in-game app store. So they have a few other slides where they're basically saying interoperable game space, which any collection can tie their NFTs into. So they even included some CCO projects like MFers in their kind of preview video of what's to come. So any collection can tie into their game space. So, they kind of make fun of things like Sandbox, where it's just like this place, or Decentraland, where this random place where you go to and show up.
You
and
hang
it's-
out and have a
yeah,
virtual
it's-
conversation.
That's super boring.
What is the purpose of that? There's no challenge, as they say, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So this seems a little half baked, to be honest, but it does seem like that they're trying to go for some network effects, like let any collection that even non-Yuga Labs come into their game space and potentially play games, possibly.
But the more important part for me is that their compass is pointed in the right direction.
Right.
They're thinking about the idea of a metaverse in the right way. Like the comment that they've made publicly about like showing up into a virtual space and just having a conversation and it being useless is absolutely correct. Like nobody really wants to do that. But what they do want to do is like play a game, have like a challenge that we embark on together.
Win some more 8 tokens, maybe.
Yeah.
Would this be analogous to like saying Decentraland or Sandbox is like an app, but then Yuga is trying to build like app store.
Yeah, app store. You plug in your app. It's in the
It's like
same
infrastructure.
infrastructure.
Right?
Which is super smart.
Yeah,
So we don't know.
Smart.
they'll do it.
No, I
These
mean,
guys are smart.
yeah, they are. But I think I don't think they necessarily have like a beeline to what the vision is. I mean, maybe they do.
There's gonna be a lot of players in the space.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of got the same gut reaction you did, which is, oh, Mushi's here.
Hi, Moosh.
Which is when I saw like they identified a lot of problems that I thought were accurate, right? We're just developing all this land and then people go with some crappy avatar and hang out. But I didn't really see like good solutions. They kind of were generally like hand wavy. Like, oh, we're
Yeah.
gonna build this thing and it's gonna be great. And people are like, fuck yeah.
I mean, specifically, they made fun of Facebook's version of the metaverse, which is like show up and cartoon avatar and let's
Yeah.
wave at each other and let's have
Yeah, that was a
meetings.
good
Yeah,
start.
so who knows if that made it to the final deck, but still pretty funny they pointed them out. Third slide, 3 out of 5 that we wanted to point
Okay.
out. The next one is a land sale. And I just want to point this out for the amount of money they're going to make. So they talk about 200,000 land plots. They're going to do 100,000 soon. 30,000 they're keeping for themselves and probably investors. 70,000 they're going to sell, probably soon-ish.
One ETH each.
One each. So we're talking about a haul of about $200 million.
And guess what? We're all lined up to buy it. We all
Yeah.
We're all
How
lined up
many
to buy
plots
it.
are you guys getting?
Probably a couple. We're all
I don't
lined
know.
up. We're all lined up to
I
buy it.
don't know. I don't know if I understand what
goes
I'm
against-
doing yet.
They're literally gonna
What's the
sell
value
all
here?
70,000 immediately.
No, they will.
It doesn't matter.
So
whether
for
you
that
buy it.
reason alone,
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yes, literally, just to sell it to somebody else.
It's like Shark Tank, and for that reason, I'm in.
And Armand, you brought up this point, I think it was a few days ago on the thread, that like you're a little bearish on other collections just because this one collection could have potentially stuck up 70,000 ETH.
It's
in the
not even.
next
It's
60
not
days.
potentially. It's a certainty.
Yeah. So I think if you have something that you think is above market value and you have the opportunity to sell it.
FOMO is powerful, man.
It's so powerful.
Everyone is going to fire sale the shit out of their NFTs to get in on this.
Wow.
It's a certainty.
I can see it. Yep, I can see it.
But we saw the opposite when
That's why
ApeCoin
I'm ahead of it.
when ApeCoin got dropped, people sold ApeCoin and rotated into other projects. Like a
Totally.
bunch of other projects saw a little boost.
Right, and then that will all just repatriate back home to Yuga.
It's a fickle space. I think that's like the main thing to take away in general that I've been observing is like how not fickle in terms of like the people that are in NFTs and crypto are in, like they're committed. It's like WAGME, they're going all in on this. But what's fickle is the yield chase. Like that's just always gonna be. That's inherent in any market.
When do we have a timeline on when land is launching?
So so the next slide is their timeline of what they're planning to release this year, and they currently have it as March. We're recording on March 23rd, so I doubt that it's going to happen in March, which also makes me
They're
think-
doing it in two segments, right?
Right, correct. So the first 100K land sale is in March. The other 100K is
Stephen, what do you think about this?
Could you be more specific?
I don't know. I just want like you're like, have you gone?
Tell me what we're stupid.
I just want the I want the Lord take on this.
So reserved.
I'm still like thinking.
You're thinking it
all
through. I can tell. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't-
You're not ready to just like annihilate it and call
It's
it
an
the best
interesting
or worst
question.
thing.
Like, how do you value digital land, right? It's sort of analogous to the real world, right? Like a lot of people say, "Oh, metaverse land is stupid because it's like it's not
Are you
really
worried?
rare."
Are you worried that it's not scarce? I am.
But like real land isn't really scarce either. Like if you've ever flown from LA to New York, there's plenty of land, right? It's not like we're running out of land. What makes the land scarce is that there's particular
Demand.
shelling points, right?
Yeah.
Here people aggregate and then you get these network effects and then those areas become like, especially if they're adjacent to an ocean, because then you actually get.
Yeah, you
run
said
up
this in
the
last
floor.
episode. It's like coastal real estate is in demand and it's scarce for that. It's scarce. and
Like
it's in
San
demand.
Diego is the perfect epitome of this, right? Because you get the ocean here, and then you get this like mountain range here, but we're beyond it, the climate just turns to crap, right? So it's just this little strip along the
Yeah.
ocean, and there's literally no more land. Like, good luck trying to build a house anywhere.
So
you know?
in the metaverse or in digital landscapes, we'll see the same thing. It'll be
It-
like,
it-
I want the house next to Snoop Dogg's. In other
Yeah, or
words,
it's like if Yuga becomes like the Manhattan of the metaverse, right? Then yeah, if there's like enough demand, and there's like and they don't like just keep printing more land, then you could see a similar phenomenon. I would love to see if anybody actually should look into this. I wonder if anybody's even attempted to value, like put like a model on metaverse land.
nobody knows what anything is right
No,
now.
everybody's just pulling stuff out of their ass right now. Like we're
Nobody
all
knows
just
anything.
Well, how would you even set the upper bound of like total metaverse GDP? Like, how would you even go about setting the ceiling on it? That's like an easier question.
You can't, because the velocity of money is so much higher than normal.
And velocity
I
is
don't think
one
that's
of
an easy
the
question at
variables
all.
within GDP, of course.
It's
Yeah.
going to be interesting to see like what people create for like utility in your land, right? Because in the real world, a lot of land has value because it generates cash flows, and I would just simply attach multiples to it on the basis of like the risk-free rate.
Well, you made it seem akin to an app store, and we can value the app store of
Their
app.
rates.
That's a good way of valuing like Yuga's protocol, I guess. But the individual land, I don't know what the land plots do yet.
I'll say that like if land somehow just cash flows ETH and I can actually sell something and there's a liquid market to convert it into ETH whenever I want, that's exciting to me.
To do their thing.
And there will always be this Ponzinomic thing around it, and the only thing that you can do to escape Ponzinomics is to allow your token or your land plot to be accessed by other networks, right? So like the dollar is accessed by, like, other people accept it, right? The sandwich shop accepts it, the liquor store accepts it. So if they can somehow integrate other collections into the project and somehow integrate ApeCoin those other projects, then it could potentially escape that Ponzinomics. So your land may earn ape, and then you could turn your ape to ETH.
Did you see this, by the way? Speaking of ApeCoin, did you see that 11 in Miami is accepting ApeCoin? 11
residents.
residences.
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
Dude,
one.
this is
Sorry, what?
isn't this just like the old days
What?
of
What
like
is it?
2017 where some business like overstock.com was like, we accept Bitcoin, but nobody paid in it. It was just like a pure PR play. Like, who's gonna roll up to 11 residences and start paying rent?
An ApeCoin millionaire.
Yeah, why not? I'd turn that straight into a condo.
I just put that straight in the box of like marketing hype.
I think you're mostly right, but it pivots to like a really interesting question of like the utility of ApeCoin in everything if Yuga Labs is number one. Like if they just annihilate Sandbox and Decentraland and you buy your merch with ApeCoin from Bake and Make, and you buy your land and you buy your upcoming drops and NFTs in ApeCoin, like,
So
I mean, that's
to your point,
interesting.
I'm gonna keep us moving because
Yeah.
like the timeline has a bunch of stuff. And the one point of this slide, I believe it's slide like 82 or 83 in the deck if you're following along. I'm just gonna list off the things. We have no idea what these mean, but I just want to point out how much stuff they're planning on shipping, which is really hard to do as a company, no matter how big or small you are. So they have a January Bored Ape versus Mutant Ape App Store game. That's delayed, but anyway,
Yeah.
that's on the token. Ape token and Metaverse land sale, the first 100,000 lots. May, airdropping codas. June, Ape Fest. August, the trial of Jimmy the Monkey, plus Metaverse sale of the second 100,000. September, some game of Bored Apes and Mecha Dog, plus an ultimate Mecha Ape, whatever that is. October, Mecha Dog versus Mecha Monkey.
Mecha. Like a robot.
It doesn't.
MECA.
Oh, really?
Mecha.
Oh, I thought MECCA would be Mecha.
No, it's like a transformer.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys are bigger nerds than I am. Mecha Dog versus Mecha Monkey Invasion. December merch drop, and then of course they're gonna have their like secondary sales throughout the year. And no matter how big of a company you are, that's a lot of code to ship. Which leads us into the last slide, 5 of 5. I want to point out the income statement. I looked at a lot of P&Ls over my short career, and this one has some just like
Before you move on to the
Yeah.
income statement, because I
Sorry.
think there's plenty to talk about with like the financials. Let's just look at that roadmap
You
really
want to go back
quick.
to the Mecha Dogs?
I love these guys. I actually have like I really admire Yuga Labs. I really think that what they're doing is so goddamn good for the space and so important. We talked about this in previous episodes, the importance of like understanding product and being able to market that product and make it exciting and sexy, and how boring things have generally been over the last couple of years. Not boring in the sense of like the activity levels, but boring in the sense of like the ability to appeal to people, to the mainstream. These guys fucking get it. I admire them for that. Not only have they done this, build a $4 billion company in like 10 months, which is, has anyone ever done that? I don't know. Not only have they done that, but they've laid out a roadmap that is so exciting that everyone is paying attention to. And like, will they ship perfectly on time? Maybe not, probably not. No one ever ships on time. But the fact that they're even telling us what they're going to ship and how it's going to go, to me is just like, I support these guys 100%. And I know there's controversy with like the whole CryptoPunk thing that we talked about last time and everything that's going on there. But like in general, these guys are doing good goddamn work. That is why Larva Labs sold to Yuga Labs, because they looked at these guys and they said, they understand business, they understand marketing, we don't, we're product creators, we're artists, let us do our thing. These guys understand both sides of the spectrum.
I mean, roadmaps are great. Everybody's good at roadmap. What's really good about Yuga is they ship. Like everything they've done that I can think of has nailed it, right? Everything from the Kennel Club to the mutants. They've launched projects. They're all successful. That treasure hunt they had was really epic. I don't know if you guys remember that. So they've got a track record, and I think people are starting to kind of bet on them like you would.
Did you guys sign up? Did you guys sign up for their full registration, their like full KYC registration? They said they did not even give hints to what it would be used for, but it's like, hey, sign up for this.
No, so I went to the site, and maybe we shouldn't even click in on that, because it was like, all it was like, connect your MetaMask. There was no like KYC.
Well, there was.
Saw a tweet about
I don't know if it was like the one that Collective Shift tweeted or whatever, but like earlier in the month they had that registration process, and like a lot of the guys that are in the CryptoPunks chat did register.
Bushy smells like other dogs, and that's very rare. He was at a what do we call it? Like a doggy daycare today.
Bushy's adorable.
Mushy,
I love the moosh interruption. All right,
Okay,
I'm going to
keep
go over
going.
the income statement.
Yes.
So first, I just want to give the highlights. So 2021 actual revenue, $137 million. Net revenue, $127 million. And if the net revenue sounds like the total revenue, it's because it's true.
Yes.
Because their net profit margin was 93%, 92%. And
I've also never seen a company execute that.
so that's a beautiful thing. I will point out the glaring thing for most entrepreneurs when they look at this. The advertising line item is 2 million out of 137 million. So you're talking about 1 to 2%. Most things in consumer technology, consumer products, they require user acquisition spend, and it tends to be one of your largest line items, if not your largest. So the fact that they built this community and this company off 1 to 2% of revenue towards user acquisition, and it wasn't even like direct user acquisition. It was like, let's put on events for our existing customers. It was more about activation than anything. Shows the power of Web3. Some of the things we've talked about in prior podcasts, that when your customers are owners, they become your marketers, and there's definitely some effects of that.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. One other thing to point out: payroll and benefits was a grand total of $60,000.
What? What are they all working for?
No one's getting paid over there.
All working for free?
So-
Oh, they all got like 3 Bored Apes and called it a day.
Exactly. So in Web3 land, you can pay people with
Here's
magic
an
internet
asset
money.
for you, and an asset for you.
Here's magic internet money for you, and good luck. So just to check that though, there was $6 million of cost of goods sold. Probably a lot of headcount was put into cost of goods sold, along with some other like software, I'd imagine. Okay, looking to 2022, top line, $540 million in revenue, $455 million of net profit. Still
Still like
same,
90%.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
85% net margins. Still only $15 million going to like advertising and community building. 2-ish% of
Wow.
of revenue. So I think we're seeing the power of an example of a Web3 company at scale. And I'm curious to see what OpenSeas are, because I'd imagine we'd see some similar dynamics, similar ratios happening. But pretty cool to see these financials, whether they're absolutely accurate or not, to go through them and see, what's under the hood and what this new cohort of technology companies might look like.
It's the most impressive startup maybe of all time.
I mean, Google is the most
Yeah,
impressive
there we
business
go.
of all time, and they have not as high margins as this. So
They weren't making $500 million of net profit in year one either.
right, and I don't think Yuga Labs will get even close to the scale that Google does, but just to compare the ratios of the two companies.
It's a great start.
Yeah, it's a great start.
I'm sufficiently bullish at this point.
Okay. Anything else we want to talk about?
No, I think we
I
should.
want to talk about the coin a little bit, though, right?
I know we should.
I feel
We're
like
also
we
pretty
should.
deep into the podcast. We have 2 more segments, but
That's
yeah,
all right.
we should.
We could always just not do them. It's fine. We can do whatever we want.
Okay, what's the
If I
price?
was-
Everyone's looking at me with
If I was the structured guy, I'd be upset. I'd be like, no.
Did you sell you're the only one who bet ApeCoin in this group, right? Did you sell?
Okay, so
No, I
ApeCoin
think
right
I've not
now,
sold any.
it's at $13.62.
13 billion valuation, right?
Fully diluted, yeah.
Fully diluted valuation, about what, 2 billion
2.2 billion market
market
cap.
cap.
Fully diluted is like 13 billion.
All-time high was $17 so far per coin.
So you're
Will
holding.
we see that again in the next couple weeks?
Selling like 75% of this.
Would you?
I thought I was.
You're crazy.
I thought I would sell.
We
I
just
think,
talked about all the reasons why this is
Let's
going to
go
be
100%
absolutely
of it.
mad. Oh, you guys are crazy.
One
Well,
to
do I
one.
hear an argument for not selling? Because I originally, when this launched, I was like,
Well, hold on. We just gave 45 minutes of reasons why you wouldn't sell it.
That's why you should sell, because
Yes.
the
The hype's already
the
there.
hype is real. It's
So
here.
it's like the hype is building for this unknown
Sure.
future, and like people are expecting it to happen. Like there's many reasons why this could go wrong,
Totally.
and like it has to kind of all go right to reach a $13 billion
Yeah.
market cap or fully diluted valuation.
So my personal plan is to sell 50% right around here, like around. I set like a price alert on CoinGecko of like 14.25 or 14.50 or something like that. That's just what felt comfortable.
Cool. Sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Do you know what this thing would be worth if it had the valuation multiple that like Aave does in terms of earnings?
Good question.
Aave trades at 100x earnings.
Well, hold on. What's confusing is like, what does this even give you? What does ApeCoin give you even access to?
Same thing that Aave gives you,
Because you're
access to like governance.
Right, it's just a governance coin. You don't own Yuga.
But this is better, right? Like, so I've grown very disillusioned with like the DeFi tokens because they're just governance memes, right? But these metaverse coins, like even like Wolf Games token, right? It has utility in the ecosystem. It's like needed to do the stuff, to play the game, to do everything, right? So I would almost rather, not even almost, like I would rather own like an ape than I would like own like a Uniswap token.
Fine, fair, but either way, it's just these are liquidity. The use case is liquidity dump your realized value.
Sure, but if the market is valuing these other things at that multiple, what is they're going to do 400 million in earnings this year? That puts it
Which
at
you don't get access to.
40 billion.
Which you don't have any access to or any
You don't
rights
have
to.
any access to them in the other stuff too. That's my point. Like,
Right,
market
they
is
all suck.
counting- Right, but if you're at least valuing it at a comp, then you can make an argument that it's still like 6 or 7x like undervalued, like relative to all the other.
They're all overvalued. And you look at the charts of all of them; they are like freaking straight down.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but maybe they bought.
So how do you value comp this? Like, what's the closest thing we can look at? Would we look at a metaverse? Like, I mean, like a sandbox?
I think the best thing you can do is to look at, like, at least Yuga has like earnings.
Yeah.
Right? So the best thing you can do is comp it against other stuff in the space that has earnings. Like ideally, if the token also accrues value, right?
Mhm.
And then you have to weigh like the inflation against it, right? So like the circulating supply on this is 2 billion, but the FTV is 13.5 billion, which means like 90% of the supply is still going to be emitted via inflation in the future, which is like the tricky thing.
What's crazy to me? Okay, so I just pulled up Mana, Decentraland's token. Market cap of Mana is actually 4 billion today.
So I
double
got at
eight.
least double to go.
I
So that
get
I was hoping for like a mid-20s exit of 50%. I see that that's not happening at this point. in the short term.
Maybe not tomorrow, but maybe you get there.
But like, oh, totally. How could they
So
not?
5.7 billion fully diluted.
This coin will be at least $25, $30 in the medium.
I think like if you compare the two, I'm way more bullish Yuga's product than I am Decentraland.
That's like you do with Mon.
Right. So by that comp, I think probably.
$25.
I mean, real quick, what you said, I don't think it makes sense to me because, like, let's say Uniswap, the DAO has control over the actual revenues, right? The DAO, if it wasn't controlled by A16 and Uniswap, the company, and other investors, you know, in a majority, they could potentially say, we want the fee revenue to come to the token holders and we want to earn a yield off it. But with ApeCoin, there's no possibility of saying, hey, we want that royalty revenue to come to the Ape token.
Why not?
Why not?
It's governance. That's exactly what you
Governance
could
over
do.
what?
Governance over the entire.
Have they said that? I don't, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't know if they said what it has governance over.
Well, nobody in DeFi says you have governance over anything. That's part of the meme game.
I think
You know,
you
they
have
can't
governance-
tell you what you get. Otherwise, it's
The only use case of it is to direct treasury funds. Like that's the only real use case. I guess like you can talk about ops stuff.
The other thing you're probably not valuing is that it's like very clear that ApeCoin could become deflationary because it could be like a unit of account in the system and be burned, whereas like the Uni tokens like probably never gonna be.
Maybe. I mean, let's not talk about hypotheticals. But like, is Yuga a DAO? Because that actually matters, I think, in this case. Because if it's a DAO, which I don't think it is, but if it is, then maybe you see like the coin, the governance.
They have a DAO component.
They've mentioned that they want to become fully decentralized.
Yeah.
That was-
Well, in that case, then maybe the ApeCoin will have some.
And in that case, to me, it's going to be totally underwhelming because every DAO, like the actual governance sucks.
No,
Like,
but DAO's the main point of DAO is direct treasury, I think.
okay, so that's possible. But if you look at DAOs, like voting mechanisms, I think only like 10% of token holders actually vote in these things.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hate using gov tokens to vote for ops stuff. Like the ops should be handled by the leaders of the business, not by freaking some guy in his basement. Like,
Here's what would be cool if the Ape token holders, and I don't think they would do this, but if they voted to make the Bored Ape non-fungible tokens or the Mutant Ape non-fungible tokens the actual voters, which I think they
great idea.
I mean, if there wasn't this opportunity to create another $13 billion in market cap, they probably would
I
have done
sort of
that.
think they did that. Like that's why they issued it to. That's why they airdropped them. Like that's sort of the idea.
Because they can make another $13 billion in market cap, or
No, they airdropped the mutant apes and the bored apes so that they can use their apes to vote, but they'll use the coin as a mechanism.
I think they use it as a way to give VCs some upside and also create an enormous market cap. Like,
Tokens are useful.
yeah, I mean,
One day.
yeah. All right, let's
Yeah.
move on to the next
Yeah.
topic. So Steven's going to tee this one up.
It's so much easier to do this in person.
I love it in person.
We can also pass the
Already-
wine bottles back and forth.
We
It's
can
nice.
pass wine. We can look each other in the eyes and go, Europe. Yep, you go. Okay, next topic. Yep.
Intimidating. Sit next to Armand. He's a proposing big. It's huge.
You get the real life version. Right here. It's all traps.
It's all traps.
Traps are in.
He's just doing
Just shrugging all day.
shrug exercises all day long.
I haven't done a shrug in years.
Man. All right, what's next?
What's next?
All right. So with the caveat that this segment may age very poorly because there is now
Let's
new,
not spend too much time on it.
Well, the point of this isn't to like talk about COVID policy. I don't think anybody wants to hear that. But like,
Are we allowed to even say COVID?
I don't know. Who
Will
cares?
we get canceled?
That's okay. We can't monetize this.
Yeah, the point of this was to more do a retrospective into what the whole thing taught us about each other, our relationship with each other, our relationship with government, what government is good and bad at doing. You know, just generalized lessons, not like should we have lockdown? Is this disease like it? We're not. Nobody here's a doctor, right? But I think we all learned a lot in the last 2 years, maybe even a little.
This is a great combo topic. Amazing. I really like this.
It was designed to be done as we were kind of winding things down. We took all the restrictions off and everything, but you know now China's locked down again and UK cases are spiking. So you know hopefully
What was this new variant?
there's a new variant that's like apparently infecting your gut now. It just keeps like moving down the body. which is
Gonna
not,
end up
not,
in your-
not
It's gonna
voting
end
well.
up- it's literally going to end up in your penis.
Voting well for American.
Little lower COVID.
COVID is going to end up in your penis.
Hey, COVID starts making you impotent, like people are gonna start caring. There's a lot of people who are.
I just want the tinglies. I just want the tinglies down there.
You just want to feel something. You want to feel something. Feel alive. Anything to feel alive. Oh god.
Yeah.
Oh.
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
Moving on.
But yeah, it's just supposed to just be a discussion on like what sort of our biggest takeaways were from this whole disaster that was the last couple of years. To me, it really laid a lot of stuff bare, right? Like right out there in the open. For me, it was like a combination of like how really bad and useless our institutions are compared to like how they could be given how rich and powerful of a nation we are, especially if you want to expand this to like the entire Western world, because I think all of the institutions of the Western world that didn't exist on like an island, right, it effectively sort of failed. But also like people's like complete loss of trust in those institutions, maybe not in an area like Sweden, but like certainly here in the US, right? And that was like the biggest problem, is like nobody really trusted like the powers that be, and that's why we couldn't do anything useful. But it wasn't just like the medical institutions, it started bleeding over into everything. And I think like virtually every institution that governs our life now, especially in the States, there's basically no trust in it. Like I'm like racking my brain to think of like a single government institution that everybody's like, yeah, it's super awesome. And they don't exist, and that's a real problem. Not just because like the next time this happens, like it might actually be like really serious. I mean, obviously this was like a bad thing, but like it wasn't like the movie Outbreak.
So where do you land? I mean, after all that being said, where do you land? How do you feel after having gone through this thing?
Oh, man, I mean, I feel kind of depressed because I'm not I'm not sure where we go from here. The other thing it really laid bare for me was the fact that everybody is just making decisions and living their life and shaping their viewpoints just purely on the basis of which team they're on. You saw people like completely shift their entire viewpoints on things like vaccines, just depending on like who the president was. There was just basically like we use the same standards for science at different points in time to completely different policy results, and like the only logical conclusion that anybody with a brain can draw in looking at all this was that politics took precedent over science. Like, you know, not that there was no science involved, but the number one priority was political ends. And if that's truly what the institutions are doing, then it's sort of understandable that the general population would react to that and be like, no, this is BS. Like, I'm not gonna go along with it. So I don't know how you guys feel.
I think mine's good to just like kind of start out, because I don't have much, but the one thing I got out of all this is like I didn't care much for like big government politics. I didn't really care to follow it or anything, and this really kind of shoved it right in my face. So I started caring, and then like what I noticed broadly is something that like crypto also showed me. It's like the incentives really dictate the outcomes in advance. And what I saw with this whole COVID thing was like I saw just a whole incentive system that like the powers that be want to just remain in power, want to grab more control. You know, Nick's mentioned in the last couple of podcasts, like they want to grab for more control and never give it back. And that's sort of what I saw broadly. But I'll pass it now. But that's where I landed.
Yeah, like a dangerous one-way road of like power consolidation. And it started to feel pretty authoritarian. It has felt pretty authoritarian, right? Like that's been the big concern, is like, how much of this do we want to give up to the government in exchange for security? I mean, I think we've all talked about this to some degree. I've talked to each of you about this individually, but it's like, if an existential threat was big enough, you would want to give some power to an institution because they have more resources, more knowledge, more access, I should say, to knowledge, like globally, to come up with solutions that help everybody. Like if for example, this pandemic was one in which there was a mortality rate of like 10%, 15%, like something that wiped out like that percentage of our entire human race
name your percent.
globally, I think we would all be like, help us.
Right.
Please, all nations, come together. Share your resources, share your knowledge, share your science, share your vaccines.
Share your guns, please.
Yeah, and we would want to figure it out. But in this case, it was a little challenging because everyone was questioning the severity of the virus in the first place. And one of the things that I wish we'd handled differently, I made a list of this in general. I definitely don't have to share the full list. It's not important. There's a few things in there that I think about often, though. Like the first thing that comes to mind is like how I wish we'd let businesses handle themselves. Like, to what degree should we have allowed independent, like individual human beings and businesses to operate? Like, the fact that we annihilated so many people's livelihood hurts me and hurts them. And that's like one of the first things that really stood out to me about how we handled this that I think was just flawed. Like the fact that we told people, we know what's best for you. I don't care if you're healthy, and I don't care if you're at risk. We're going to apply the same exact laws to everybody. Don't leave your home. I don't care if you're asymptomatic, symptomatic, doesn't matter. Don't walk into this business without a mask. We just gave like these blanket statements of like what we felt was the right approach. And I think it was nuanced, as all things are, and we should have approached it in a nuanced way and left it up to individuals to decide for themselves to a certain degree and given support to the people who needed it. I mean, Nick, you and I literally on Flow, like the first podcast we ever did, in week 1 of COVID, discussed this. Like, we discussed the importance of like protecting the elderly and the people with like, any sort of like, what do you
Pre-existing
call it?
condition.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, or anything that like
Any vulnerability.
makes you vulnerable. Yeah.
Yep.
I think, to your guys' points, there's definitely this need going forward of experts and people to have a mutual respect for each other, right? Like there's this clear tension between the general population and experts. So let's point out who experts might be. The WHO, and without triggering anyone, like Dr. Fauci is an expert in diseases and how they spread.
Man, does that guy trigger people.
Right. And so there's this lack of mutual respect, I think, between the two. And before, I will say, I was on the side of like experts. I'm like, this person fucking studied this for their entire life. They made this their like obsession. Like, we should trust the experts.
But we've learned that we can't.
Right.
Because the incentive structures are flawed and institutions are broken.
And I don't know if
to
I
a
would use
certain
the
degree.
word incentive, but it's just like this natural path that institutions follow for growth and survival.
Corruption?
Like any business, like any community does. And now I'm on the more side of like, it's the responsibility of experts to earn the respect of their population. Where before I was like, if there's an expert, just listen to the guy. The guy, or
Like they're already the expert.
Yeah, they're expert. Just
But now
listen to
you're
them,
saying
follow the directions.
The
Now,
expert has to earn.
I cringe whenever I see like a thing on Twitter now where it's like experts say like I actually cringe now. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, it's like a ploy.
and because of what you said, because they have this like, well, because I studied this for my entire life, I know better than you for your own individual situation. And that's the part where I think it kind of fractured for me, and where I now put the onus on experts to earn the respect and not have this feeling that like, I know what's good for you, but like, here's what I know, and use it to decide what you want to do for your own life.
That's well said. Because at the end of the day, even an expert, let's just say like a scientist, what is a scientist supposed to do? They take a hypothesis and they need to validate it. They need to experiment with it. They need to prove it true. They need to have it peer reviewed. Civilians, everyday people, are another way to peer review your work.
Right.
So like to your point, like if it doesn't pass that litmus test, maybe it's flawed, or maybe people are too psychologically brainwashed in the first place to be able to evaluate it properly. I don't know which one comes first, but it's a little bit of both.
No, there's like, I want like a politician or leader of the country to like acknowledge there's more ways to live this life. There's more ways to be an American than just one. You don't have to go down a certain path. And there's people who are brought up in different geographies and in different type of economic situations, and those probably impact their decision making in situations like this more than like expert advice. And if you just stick to the expert advice, you end up getting this trust and authority more than you think if you just lay out, here's what we know, here's what we thought was true and is now false. And I definitely think, imagine you're in this institution that is in charge of 330 million Americans, and you're like, we need to keep masks for our first responders. If we tell people that masks help, they'll go buy more masks, and then we won't have enough for the first responders.
Right.
Like, and then you end up in this thing where like, you end up having to go back on your word when you could just say, hey, listen, masks help,
That was
but
such a
we
joke.
need the mask for the first responders. So if you have a lot of them, maybe consider donating them. And if you only have one for
Try
yourself,
treating people like
Like people.
like,
and not.
yeah, not dumb.
Yeah, they really think we're all stupid.
And
Like,
they
it's
continue
like-
to
it's
think
like
we're
the-
stupid.
It's just like underscores everything they say. It's like, well, you're too dumb.
But
for
are we?
our
But
society,
are we?
so we're gonna have to
It's like
lie.
Putin's price hike.
We would look at each other at this table and say we aren't, but then like, do we also, us four, think that people are stupid? I think probably we look at each other at this table and be like, yeah, we think people.
I think collectively people are very smart. If individually some of them are very stupid. I also think the downside of that too is like if you
I sort of think the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why you might think that. It's an understandable position, but like I really believe in like the marketplace of ideas. I think like you can get a lot of dumb people together, but they can kind of actually achieve some sort of consensus knowledge on stuff, right? And I also think it's dangerous to have like one person in the authority, like the highest position, be like, well, I'm the one who's going to tell you what the truth is because you're too dumb, right? Like if that person was like, you know, some godlike figure who was never wrong, maybe that would be good. But they never are. They're like a human, and they're fallible, just like we are.
Yeah.
I think like if you look at I saw people take away two opposite conclusions of this whole thing, which I think was like really interesting, right? One side was like, this just shows you how like weak government is, and we need to make it like a lot stronger so that it can do things, right? And then the other side was like, this just
exactly
goes
what
to show you how incompetent government is, and we just need to sort of get it out of our lives. I'm curious, like where you guys like landed on that, like when, like to your point, like when I saw this, here's the thing I see all the time in government, right? Like at my heart, like I'm like very liberal. Right? Like I want to build a society where everything gets evened out. Like I want people to start from like the same line, right? But in practice, what I always see is every time we intervene in stuff, we see the same thing, which is that like the common guy gets wrecked and like insiders make tons of money. Like to your point about like the businesses and the people, like look at what happened in COVID. Like the Elon Musks of the world, and maybe he's an unfair person to single out, but like the biggest corporations, the richest people, they got so rich. And you know who got wrecked? Like all the little guys who couldn't work, who lost their jobs, all the small businesses. This happens like all the time, right? So that's like kind of what I see over and over again. I don't know if you guys saw a different thing, but that's
Similar to your Cantillon effect explanation. About
it is. That's kind of
Love
the same
that
thing.
clip, by the way.
Yeah, check the clip out on Twitter. Follow us at
Yes.
Alfalfa Twitter handle. Check it
Yeah,
out.
like when you have like all of this regulation, right? The powerful people who are adjacent to the regulation benefit from it, right? Even though we like to think it's like helping the little guy, it seems to almost never help the little guy. It seems to just like, yeah, it's just like there's people who are adjacent to it who can like hold the levers of power, manipulate the rules. They're closest to the money, they're closest to the laws, and they like always end up on top. So it's like, what do? You want to like level the field, you want to make society better, but then at the same time, you see that in practice, every time you try to do that from the top down, you just get corruption and you get like a further skewing of, this happened in like communism too, like everybody got poor, right? But in Soviet Russia or in the Russia, you have like oligarchs, right? There's people that got like ultra rich, and then like everybody else is poor and like, you know, left out to dry. Like, what do you do? Like, this whole thing just really underscored that for me.
Yeah, you did mention something that kind of illuminated the fault of institutions a little bit, because you talked about, I think we just briefly talked about when you view individuals, like when we look across from this table, we're like smart, you know, individual who can think for themselves and make decisions on their own. But the larger and larger you pan out, the bigger the group, you tend to think that they don't have the ability to do that. Californians, Americans, Europeans, Trump voters, Biden voters, like the bigger the group, like somehow you dehumanize them to someone who has a mother and father, a son or a daughter, or a business that they run or a job that they go to, you dehumanize it a bit. So you feel like you need to like make these decisions for, for them, for their safety. And maybe that's where a little of like inherent fault comes in institutions. And institutions aren't just government, they're, PTA boards and sports teams and all kinds of like up and down the community size. So I don't know. I think that's something to like be aware of. Just like as you're viewing the larger and larger group, the less the more you dehumanize them. And I don't know, something to think about. But I think we generally fall along the libertarian path so much. Like we want people to be able to make the decisions for themselves, but it comes in the balance when there's something that like life at stake, when there's something that you can spread, and we live in a more networked society. Like how do you balance that? And we're going to butt up against this nonstop over the next like 20 years. So I feel like this won't be the first podcast that we touch on this. I did want to make one other thing about the COVID retrospective is that there was this clear technological transformation. Like we all became more ingrained in technology. People started working from home. And I think there's this growing cyber vulnerability that just 10x the amount of vulnerability that we have. So you have government agencies, you have big corporations, now people working from home, using their home networks, using their home laptops, and you don't have as much security. So I guess my biggest prediction post COVID is that we're just like a train wreck of a potential like cyber pandemic coming down the line.
But where does that start? Like you're talking about like the ISPs get hit, or are you talking about just like you're now dehumanizing internet users to be stupid idiots that can't like avoid viruses on their laptops?
I'm talking about like the utility companies have their employees working from home, potentially, right? Like you have the controller of a utility company working from home. Bad, right? They're on their home network. They're like not practicing good hygiene. You send an invoice to a controller. You take over their computer. You potentially take over the network. It's certainly possible. It's certainly been proven that like other foreign actors and potentially non-nation state actors can gain access. And I think it's inevitable before this happens. And surprisingly, that didn't happen before a global pandemic didn't happen. But the global pandemic literally accelerated the vulnerabilities of a cybersecurity pandemic. So I don't know a way to play it. Like I literally want to put out of the money call options, beyond actually protecting the people on this amount to bet on this. But it seems pretty clear that like it's going to happen, and most likely not from a nation state, right? Because like no nation state wants to set off like a nuclear war because of taking down an electrical grid. But some of these viruses have like replicated and kind of gone out of control, and I think we could potentially see something like that. So that was one of my retrospectives from the COVID thing is like, wow, we're even more vulnerable to a cyber attack than we were before. And it was kind of very tangential to your initial motivation for talking
Gray
about
swan, right?
it. Gray swan.
Gray swan.
Right.
Not a black swan. Gray swan. Unlikely thing that everybody talks about, but nobody does anything about, and then ultimately it like happens.
Just happens.
Yeah. I mean, you reminded me too to just bring this around, just not totally shit on government, although it's kind of like half and half. Like, what was like the best thing we did in the whole pandemic? It was probably the development of the vaccines, right?
That was pretty phenomenal.
They're not
The
without,
best thing we did in
not
what
without
way?
flaws, right? But like if you take a step back and look at it objectively, wow, this is incredible.
But what did government
Like
do?
They kind of
accomplishment-wise?
sat there and they were basically just like a giant piggy bank, right? Like here's a giant pile of cash. Now the market go do something, and maybe I don't know. Maybe that is kind of more of what government should do. Maybe we should look for more ways for like government to just be a piggy bank, and then the structure stuff out so that it doesn't become like a cash grab, but it turns into useful stuff. But like when we have government try to actually do the policy themselves, it seems terrible. But they seem useful as like a piggy.
I don't want the government to be sort of like the VC fund that I'm funding with my dollars. Like, pass.
I mean, they're turning.
I mean, you're giving them their money. Would you rather have them spend it themselves? Or give it
No, but they're going to take more money. Like obviously they're taking more money, just like they want more control. They want more money too. Like
Question.
You've already paid the money.
it's going to have a tax. It's going to go up or down.
They always go up. They
Exactly.
go up. They go up no matter what.
Exactly. They want more
If
money.
anything, they should go down under my paradigm because like the money's going to be spent more efficiently and it doesn't get like lit on fire, so they need more of it, right? Like if the government tried to develop the vaccine by themselves, we'd be like 30 years into it and like 100x the budget.
For
And
sure.
we'd have to-
Agree, but you can have it. But you can have it be fully privatized.
Like the whole thing.
No, like that wouldn't have. Do you really think that we would have had the vaccine if it was like completely privatized?
Well, you need a buyer of last resort, and they were the buyer of last resort. So my question is, did capitalism work? Obviously, we got a vaccine.
Good question.
The fastest. Did capitalism work? Because there was obviously profit incentive to develop this thing.
I mean, mRNA was introduced as a solution for that very reason, right? I mean, how long has Malone and his team, cohort of people, I don't even know if we're allowed to talk about that guy, been working on mRNA technology? I mean, Stephen, you kind of probably spent a little more time
I think he
looking at his work.
only worked on like a small part of it. To be fair, I don't
Yeah,
wanna,
I think it's kind of one of those marketing things of like taking a
it's
little
like
bit
one
of
these-
extra.
Yeah, it's like one of these kind of gray area things, but it's been a thing that's been around for decades. I think, right? Like
Yeah.
in some
A
capacity.
few,
They-
for sure.
Like it's not like they just came up with this, right? People had hypothesized, I think, that
Yeah.
like it could be used in this regard, the tech, and just took a little bit of cash and
Yeah.
a lot of like profit incentive. And
But it's a good question Nick is asking. It's like when the incentives are in place and the motivation is there,
Yeah.
you find some
The
interesting
more difficult
solutions.
scenario, I think, is like the climate change thing, right? Like you could argue that COVID may have gotten solved without government because like a lot of people were like literally going to die and in like a very short order versus a problem that's like punted out like decades into the future.
Yeah.
And like the downsides are sort of like less immediately felt and they're shared.
What is
by
that
everybody.
cognitive bias from like,
Ooh,
Oh, that's a great segue.
good transition.
Good
Good
isn't there a
stuff.
cognitive bias on like, there's some
In case you're not aware, we're on segment 3 now.
Yeah,
Segment 3.
There's like an
Jamie,
immediate
pull the
need,
slides.
even though the longer term need is, or the long term problem is like bigger. Is there? I mean, does any of four of us know of it? I'm sure there is. Is there like a label for it?
The immediacy bias?
The immediacy bias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just made that
Primacy.
up. Is that bias?
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's a primacy bias.
I'll
right?
copyright that for you.
Where the first thing you hear is like the issue that you give. or
I mean,
reason
well, as humans, we're obviously not very good at like processing the stuff that is in the future and just kind of, this is like with the kid, like when they give kids like the marshmallows, right? You could have one marshmallow now.
That's
or
exactly a good example
you
for
have
it.
2 marshmallows in the future. And like, that's
What do they
really
choose?
hard. Well, they choose both, right? And they make predictions about the kids on the basis of that, which in my opinion are a little, they do that in psych. They try to like
Yeah.
connect all these like, oh, well, we can predict exactly you're going to be a serial killer because you chose one marshmallow, which isn't really true. But I think there's decent evidence to support the idea that if you're able to like sort of like delay gratification, it obviously has these like effects in your life, like the ability to delay gratification has these positive effects, and it's useful because it's hard because it's not people's like normal tendency. Your normal tendency is to like kind of gorge, right?
Yeah.
You were out in like the wild like 80,000 years ago running around.
So-
like, you could be dead like tomorrow. You
So
just
I wanted
go
to
for it.
just like a random, very, very existential like comment is like this is the time for that. It's like the fact that we can even think about the future is pretty rad. Like
Oh
I
my
know that
God.
we don't do a good job of it,
It's
to your
blunt.
point, Nick, but like Mushi doesn't think about the future.
And he also
At
doesn't
all.
think about the past very much because like,
Right.
his survival instincts are like, when will the humans give me food?
Yes.
And like, will I be alone
He
for the
lives in
next
the
7
home.
hours?
Yes.
So
It's a
you're-
beautiful thing. And we're the only species that we know of that has the capacity to think into the future and care for something like our own planet and to make decisions for future generations. What a wild concept. Like to care about what future generations are going to experience is really wild. But to your point, we don't do a good job of it, and we probably should do better. So
Right.
let's shift into this behavioral biases.
Right. So I think the goal of this topic is that our human brain is somewhat of a software, right? It was engineered, like thousands, tens of thousands of years ago to promote our survival. But because we have some bugs in it, it tells us that we're right when we're actually wrong, right? So that's the bug inherently human software. So we want to be able to identify what are these biases that are like pre-programmed into our brain. And obviously you have a leniency to talk about these things when it comes to investing, specifically in crypto, because I think it comes about very often. But also in life, like how you make.
And what's the
long-term
benefit of understanding these? It's like massive.
Because you have awareness, you can then, like separate it from yourself and be like, oh, I am not this confirmation bias. I am not this sunk cost bias. And I'm realizing that I'm tilting. And maybe it'd be cool if Steven could talk about, as a previous poker player, like how to like be aware of these emotions when you're on tilt or when you're in these biases, and how do you separate themselves and make a positive, expected value decision in these. So I guess that's the goal of the topic, why we think it's valuable.
Cool intro.
Yeah, poker is like a treasure trove of biases that you have to deal with all the time. I think two of them that are biggest in my life still. One is the endowment bias, right? You value money that you already have differently. This is like really salient in both gambling and trading, right? So in gambling, when you have the money already and you have like a bunch of money in front of you, you often play worse. Like you treat that money differently than if you didn't have it before, right? Mm-hmm. People play looser, they make poor calls, they make bad bluffs, like that. But when we trade crypto or stocks, right? Like we have this money, right? Like there's a couple things, right? We see it in the airdrops. We get this airdrop and we're like, ooh, God, like I don't know if I want to sell this. This could like 20x. Right. But if we honestly ask ourselves the question, like, would I buy this if I didn't already have it?
Good question.
Often the answer is like no. It's never yes.
To that degree.
It's never yes, right? So that's like a problem, right? But then the problem also comes like when you buy Solana at $10 and then it runs up to $250, and you're like, oh man, it's gonna go to 1,000. I should like keep it. But if you took a step back and you owned a no Solana at $250, and so you ran your $10 up to like 90 grand. Would you buy $90,000 of Solana at $250? Like usually, like if you take a step back, you'd be like, absolutely not. But it's the same as you not selling it. I mean, like there's tax considerations, so I don't want to say it's exactly the same, but it's sort of the same. Like if you wouldn't buy it in that moment because you don't think it's good value, maybe you shouldn't be holding it either, right? So that's something I run into all the time. The other thing that used to plague me in poker was like chasing losses. Like in reality in life, we're all playing this giant game where we go up, we go down, and it's not just financial, it's stuff in our life, it's like achievements and failures, right? But there's like a human thing that in the moment wants to get back to even. Like we can't zoom out and see the whole long game. It's like this like chart that just goes up and down and up and down and up and down, but sort of trends up. Mm-hmm. And in the moment, like we hate when we go down and we want to just do bad irrational things to get back to even. I do this when I play like board games. I do this when I play video games. I do this when I trade. I do this like all over the place. Like I hate being like this happened to me a few nights ago. Like I was playing like Settlers of Catan on my iPad, and I'm like, I'm gonna play one game. And I played a game. It was so bad. I got wrecked. I came in last. I scored like 3 points. It was embarrassing. And I was like, I can't end on that note. I'm gonna play another game. And then I lost again. And I played another game. And I lost again.
Double down.
6 games later. An hour and a half past my bedtime, I lost again, and finally like came to my senses, and I was like, Jesus,
is that a kink in the code of your brain though, or just like a survival, like I want to win?
I know a lot of people who don't suffer from this. I know like tons of people are exactly like me. Right? Like it's like a game. Like people who have like gambling addictions, right? Are like they have the thing that I have, which is odd that I was able to do that, like, and not lose my mind. But like, yeah, most people have that, but I have it real bad. It's like a constant fight for me.
I have a question for you, Steven. So you've played a lot of poker as a professional poker player. You've played low stakes, you've played high stakes. Did you notice the difference in your propensity to become biased based upon the stakes? So basically, when the stakes got higher and you're playing, I don't know, Phil Ivey in a cash game online, did your propensity to become biased, like, was it more likely to happen? Did you have to be aware of it, or
I would say
the stakes matter?
The stakes matter because the really extreme stakes, I think, snap you into reality.
Into reality, not like...
Yes. like
On
when
tilt.
like when I was playing Ivy, it was for so much money that like my hand was physically shaking when I was like making all the moves. I needed to use the mouse with two hands because I was so scared, right? So the worst is like the best is the high extreme, right? But I think it kind of gets the worst like in the middle actually, where it's like enough for it to like kind of hurt a little bit, but it's not so much of a pain point that it really like for me that was like when I used to play like a lot of 25-50 10-20 no limit poker, and those are pretty big stakes still, right? Like you lose the 2,000 5,000 buy-in, but 10-20 was like really bad because 10-20 for me was the point where I could maximum tilt, because it was the point where I didn't like hit a thing in my brain that was like, whoa, you gotta stop, but I still like needed to get even. It was like the worst of all worlds. So that was when I was like really at my worst, like when I got wrecked at those stakes. Yeah. So.
What's interesting is there's so many like former professional poker players in crypto now,
But that are good
and
yeah.
like internet marketing and
Poker players.
poker.
Could be a
It's like-
survivorship bias thing though, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
We don't see all the poker players who kind of get wrecked because they're not on Twitter anymore.
Eric, let's go to you next, because like you're a professional money manager, so like you particularly have to be aware of these things when you're managing other people's money, not just your own.
So I'll talk about one. It's a cognitive bias called loss aversion. Loss aversion is sort of put in juxtaposition to risk aversion. Risk aversion is like the smart way to do it. Loss aversion is like what the dumb human software malfunction brain does. So loss aversion, it basically plays off this premise that human beings feel worse when they lose and they feel good when they win. Okay, so you take that premise, and when you're afraid of losing, you'll make poor investment decisions. So like, let's take Ethereum as like an example right now. So ETH is at 3K. ETH can go down, right? And that would feel bad. Like you're gonna feel bad if ETH goes down. But like the real risk is you sell ETH down at 2K and ETH actually goes up to its intrinsic value of 10 to 15K. That's the real risk. The risk is to the upside. So if you're a risk optimizer, you wouldn't be selling ETH when it drops to 2K. You would want to hold it. So a loss aversion, like a guy who's exhibiting loss aversion, would be like, oh God, I can't handle losing this money when ETH goes down. I got to get rid of it. So he'll like feel that pain, dump his ETH. But like a risk averse guy will say like, well, now ETH's down to 2K. I've actually taken out quite a bit of risk from ETH. I'll just hold it. That's one that I think is very important.
Do you think that manifests in both sizing your positions too small and taking profits too early, which seems to kind of hurt you, especially in crypto because you get stuff that runs like 1,000x.
Right.
So taking profits too early can hurt, and like sizing. Like I know that I personally, one of the biggest fuck ups I've had in crypto has been
Sizing someone that's too small.
Sizing too small and selling too
Don't
early.
bet more than 1%.
but like sometimes I just like no. Yeah, like Pancake was a great example of taking profits.
So I guess like with that, I mean, I think the four of us have talked about this equation that exists where you can like help size your position correctly. I think on
Kelly criterion.
the Kelly criterion, you can describe that one?
What's that?
You want to describe that?
I can describe it in a generalized sense. The Kelly criterion is a formula for determining exactly how much of your entire bankroll you should bet. Like a lot of people don't know this, but like there's actually like a mathematical formula that says like how much you should bet, and it's called the Kelly criterion. I think it's a combination of like your edge and the variance. I don't use it like a ton, although I probably should more. But I think it's a function of the fact that like when you lose like 50%, you need like 100% gain to get back to even. And when you lose 75%, you need a 300% gain to get back to even, right? So it's not like going ham on everything when you have an edge is necessarily best. It like is like good to find this number. I know a lot of traders use like they use like a R, like their kind of like risk thing. They'll be like, oh, I bet 2R on this trade or 3R, but like you're never going to see a really good trader bet like half of his stack on one trade, even if he's like really, really, really sure. Because if you mess up, like you're in a hole.
I mean, simple framework is limit your long bets to 20% of your portfolio, and then always on the other side, meaning like don't sell too early, like always leave a little bit of a runner in case there's a moon scenario.
Yes, that's really good for.
Good for. I don't even know if it's
Meanwhile, you
mathematically
guys told me
correct.
to sell all my ApeCoin.
Well,
Never
Stacks
sell
up
all.
nicely.
Never sell all.
Stacks up nicely.
to be fair, I rescinded my position on.
Thank you. I heard
theory.
that. Yes.
I do think the don't sell everything is more of a psychological thing than it is like mathematical. Like the
Yeah.
psychological pain of selling something that
It's
then goes
huge.
like 100x
It's huge.
is so painful versus the
It's worth
extra
it.
50% of 20% that you lose if you sell.
Hold 20% that becomes 0 in case it becomes 1,000x.
Yeah, like we have to realize we're like humans, like we're not like math equations, and
Yeah.
things just like hurt even if they're irrational. You know, it's
Totally.
like the reason why I'm not 100% in crypto.
Yeah.
Even though I think it's like going to go up, like I can't deal with like the intermittent pain. Even as somebody who's like used to dealing with like loss, it's still too much for me.
Eric, I have a follow-up question. So you differentiate between loss aversion and risk aversion. And I've heard people eloquently type this on Twitter that, if you sell something too early, it's because you didn't have like an original thesis on your bet. So if something goes down, we obviously all feel that. But some people kind of feel good when something goes down.
We're kind of all rooting for it to go down.
We're like,
right now.
go down,
Yeah, yeah.
so I can
It's
potentially
like a
shove
shove.
more. And like you almost get this like
The
sense
ETH shove is coming.
you get this sense
All
of comfort. So I guess the question is, if you are trying to sell something that went down, the question, if your thesis right, or did you even have a thesis going into your investment?
God, and it kind of goes back to Steven's original one because, my dear fiance is dealing with this moment right now. Like, she sold 220, now it's at 95, and she's like, "Well, I am kind of like anchored to this original price. I'm down a lot, and you do have to think about what's going forward, but what's the risk of it going down for her today versus like the risk of it going back to 220? What's the possibility it goes back up? Like, if you were really going to consider all these things. In the meantime, she's just like, I'm just going to hold it.
Maybe her thesis is strong.
She's in it for the tech now.
Yeah.
Which might not be a bad place to be.
The cycle we all go through
at some point.
It's a good alt-1 thesis, right? I mean,
Sure.
Yeah.
maybe.
It's a hedge. It's a Ethereum hedge. Yeah.
I got enough for
Just buy more Ethereum, and then it becomes an Ethereum hedge, and you're good.
That's what I'm thinking about when you guys say your vows out loud. Is his ETH becomes their ETH.
Do I include that in the ceremony?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
I'll be
Mr.
offended if you don't.
Efficient.
We want green up. We want green up.
On which side, boys?
Never been more terrified of anything in my life, by the way.
Go on.
I got a bias to share, and I'm sharing this bias more because I have experienced it, but more so because I think a lot of people experience it. Herd behavior bias. Herd behavior happens when investors follow others rather than making their own decisions. It's FOMO.
Pure FOMO.
It's FOMO. The number one bias that we see today, that we don't have conscious awareness of the fact that it's a cognitive malfunction. It's literally a behavior bias, is this FOMO aspect to NFTs and crypto. So when I first got started, I told that story to Founder today. I ran home and got the curio cards. Buying those curio cards. No.
Yeah.
I'm still happy about it because I'm in that one for 5 to 10 years. Yeah.
You should wait to see what these curios do.
Gorgeous.
They're never gonna get
This
back to
shitty
3.
picture of an apple,
Dude, they're so ugly.
is so.
They're so ugly. Hold on, don't you have the Rambo,
I have the barbarian.
the barbarian?
But the barbarian's a big deal. I think it's
Yeah.
the first GIF ever
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
I think you should record yourself saying that, play it back to yourself later, and see what emotional biases you're exhibiting.
I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. The market's wrong.
Is that like a self-affirmation? Just tell himself in the mirror every morning?
I am the barbarian. I am the barbarian.
The barbarian is the first gift.
The funniest thing too is I bought it because I bought something else that I thought was the first GIF, and then I realized it
Oh,
wasn't.
God.
It was just the first GIF with more than 2 frames, which is a little arbitrary.
See,
I was like, I need the first GIF, so then I bought.
I didn't even know first GIF was
Is it GIF?
in in conversation.
Wait, no, it's GIF, right?
It's Jim.
This has been settled.
I'm a GIF guy. I'm a big GIF guy.
Okay, the founder said it's GIF, but that's
Graphics. The first word is graphics. It's an acronym.
Draft.
Oh, do you,
Like
do you park your car in the garage? Do you take out the garbage?
Garage is not an acronym.
All right. Well, I think we should end it there. Like my cognitive biases are pretty echo yours, so I think that's a good place to wrap it.
It's over it.
It's just like hour and a half. Enough is enough. That was.
I don't know. I didn't was like, I don't want to go.
I don't know what just happened.
That was a terrible outro.
Honestly, feel like I just got broken up with. It was
Like,
like dinner's over.
So I'm gonna leave now.
If you want to know what it's like to break up together, it's equally as awkward.
Oh my god! I gotta say, we should do this again.
In person, pretty fun.
We should do this again
In person's
sometime.
pretty good.
You guys are pretty cool, man.
Yeah, I like you.
I like you, man. Bring your friends, come back sometime, and hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. Drop a comment on our YouTube, actually. If you're watching along with the video, we'd love to know what you think. We're literally all in the same room. We're going to do this again if you enjoy it. And
Should we go live? Should we ever go live? Let us
yes.
know on YouTube.
If you're here, if you're watching, oh my God, that's so meta. We're all in the shot, in Nick's shot right now. We have the capability to take this live. So if you'd like to see that, drop a comment and say, please go live. Let's do it live.
What if all the comments are no?
I mean, that's okay too. That's totally okay too.
I've noticed that as we've gotten more comments, like the trolls are starting to come out.
I
like
love,
that.
I
Come
love
on,
trolls.
baby.
Kind of hurts a little bit.
I love
I'm
trolls.
not ready for it.
Hop in the Discord. We record on Wednesdays, publish on Friday or Saturdays. We'll get like a specific schedule down. But in between, during the days, everyone's kind of dropping their thoughts throughout the week and throughout the day. And I find it helpful to instead of have it in our group thread, to have it a little more open.
Yes.
So I definitely think it's worthwhile. So if you got some time and you want to have it up on the second screen, you got to work, do it.
Yep.
Join the convo.
Yep. Everything's below in the description. And yeah, to be specific on this live thing, we would, if enough people want it, we would commit to Wednesdays at 5:30, 5-ish, something like that. We'll let you know. But we'd go live. We do this whole thing live on YouTube. And probably what we would do, we haven't discussed this, but we'd do a little Q&A segment at the end for those people that are with us live. I think that'd be super fun.
I'll hop in
Discord now.
Or in the beginning.
Let's chat it up.
I'm
Cool.
hopping in there.
All right, guys. I think that's a wrap.
All right. Later.
Peace.
Bye.
Later.